with me, I have my dear coach.
Dear.
Coach.
Wow, I love that.
Novello. Who here has seen that face before?
If you haven't, it's my bad. I need to be doing a better job on media. It's my bad.
So he's a real estate coach, real estate agent, real estate investor. So many titles, man. He's been doing this for more than 20 years. He has an organization of more than 300 agents. You should clap to that.
That's legit. Yeah.
You closed more than 100 transactions for 10 years in a row.
10 years in a row.
And twice 200 transactions in one.
You can clap that shit up too. Yeah, that's pretty good.
He coached agents, he coached me and helped me grow my business and scale my business to go from 0 to now closing 60 transactions every year. I have 3 full-time members in my team and my staff, and a lot of systems and procedures.
And when we met, precisely how many systems did you have?
Nothing. Everything was in my head.
Sheets of paper.
Yep.
Anybody know what that's like?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All your business in your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah. In your emails? Yeah. It's impossible to scale. So he was, very much so working, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At the same time, it was inhibiting because you can only grow to the proportion that your systems will allow you to. So despite rah-rah, despite doing cold plunges, despite running marathons that have nothing to do with selling real estate, you can only grow to the proportion that your systems will allow you to. And we worked really hard to set those systems up.
I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah.
The other person I want to introduce is Melinda Grimaldi. Give it up for Melinda. She's a real estate attorney here in South Florida. She runs a title company as well, closing hundreds of transactions as well. And she's a very good planner. Melinda is also somebody that poured so much into me and helped me plan. Planning, guys. Putting numbers, knowing your numbers.
So yes, I'm a real estate and estate planning attorney. I have a law firm. I have a title company. My law firm has been around for 15 years, but I probably haven't really been a business owner for 15 years. I probably only became a business owner like 7 years ago. Before that, I just created a job for myself. So I think that's like the goal for today, is not just creating jobs for ourselves, but creating businesses for ourselves.
Someone else that I want to introduce is my dear friend Eric Rodriguez. He's the one hosting the venue, the amazing venue that we have here. He's the top producer, #1 producer of this branch, closing millions of dollars in volume. He does commercial loans, investment loans, regular real estate, residential loans as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the experience with scaling.
My turning point was COVID, right? When the refi and everything was super low in rates, and I outworked myself like crazy. I was doing everything myself, processing a lot of loans myself, thinking that I was the only one that could handle all that business, and I burned myself completely out. Yeah, you make a lot of money, but you have no life. So I had to learn how to kind of let off the gas and give some work to other people.
Good question. When you hear the word scaling, what comes to mind? Scaling.
We got hand motions. Do that again. There you go. That comes to his mind.
There you go.
Automating.
Ooh, I like that one.
We're getting fancier with the words. What else?
Yes. Dear Coach, do you mind sharing?
I gotta get a shirt that says "Dear Coach." This is dope.
I'm gonna make you that shirt.
God damn, I'm getting all this love right now. This is fantastic.
Can you share with us?
Yeah. So
in your experience,
Yeah.
you coach hundreds, if not thousands of agents. What are those elements that stop and prevent agents from scaling their business?
yeah, there's 5 that I call like assassins, right? Because scaling to me really is progress. It's success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile goal and objective. Needs to be worthwhile.
Repeat that.
Success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile goal and objective. So like becoming a great drug dealer is not a worthwhile goal and objective. Selling a lot of real estate is, and it's legal. I can sell all I want, right? So it's really about progress, and I believe that business is not a physical, material experience. I think it's a spiritual one. Like as you grow more, you can give more. But there are these intangible things. So we spend a lot of our time. How many people watch YouTube on a regular basis? Yeah, always trying to gather information, right? Yeah. How good does that information do you? How many people know what it takes to lose weight? Show of hands. Yeah, eat less, work out more, correct? How good does that information do most people? How many people know what it takes to get rich, build wealth? Make more money, spend less, invest the difference. Do you need a PhD for that? How good does that information do you? Most of this, it's not like the practical like how-to. It's the intangible, internal things that are going on.
The tendencies you have.
Tendencies and beliefs and emotions. So beliefs are just opinions that you've developed loyalty to over time. So there's 5 assassins that get in the way of scaling. Okay? And part of the reason is because 65% of us grow up in families that live paycheck to paycheck. I did.
I do.
So do you know what you hear all the time? Money doesn't grow on trees. Oh my God, you guys went to the same school as I did. Ready for the next one? Eat all the food on your plate. Oh my God. And if you want to do something right, you need to do it yourself, which is horseshit. How many successful businesses do you know that have 0 employees? None. The people who gave you that advice were employees. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? That's programming. It's very difficult to unwind that internally. It's more psychological than it is practical. So there's 5 things psychologically that get in your way. The first one is the staller. How many of you guys ever had a big decision that you knew you need to make and you procrastinated making it? Everybody should be raising their damn hand. That is the staller. You get an invoice, you don't pay it. Because maybe things will change. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go on that trip. I don't know if I'm going to take that little thing. I don't know if I'm going to... Look, it's happened to you, right? Okay.
You probably have a couple ones that you sold, you know.
Right. The staller. You want to have a conversation with us about EXP and you stall. You see what I'm saying? Like it's stalling. There's a decision that needs to be made. But what's underneath the staller? What's underneath it? Fear. Afraid of what?
Failure.
Fear? I'm afraid of what people will think of me and I'm afraid I'm going to make the wrong decision. Do you know what you were taught in school? When you mess up, what happens when you messed up in school? You got in trouble. Like this, right? And you were taught that collaborating with others is called what? Cheating. Not collaborating as adults is stupid. You understand? So the first one is the staller. Okay? The second one is the speed demon. Speed demon. Yes. Oh, I got to do this thing. I'm going to do this. Oh, my cousin needs a job. I'm going to hire my cousin. You make a real fast decision. And how does that usually work out? Shitty. And then you never take the time. Pain plus reflection equals progress. You never take the time to do what?
Reflect.
Reflect on what did I do wrong. So then do you know what you do? Repeat the same problem over and over. Look how many heads are nodding. Okay? So that's the next one. The third one is the supervisor. If you ever get yourself to a point where you're willing to pay somebody to do something for you, do you know what you do? You hover over them and end up taking it back from them and doing it for them. Oh, there's another head nodding. Do you know why you do that? Control, and you don't trust people. Notice, are any of these have to do with the practical world? Nope, not the physical world. It's all internal, right?
Yep.
The fourth one is the saver. I'm saving a little nest egg. Oh, I can't take that course. It's $1,000. That's a lot of money. I'm saving. Oh, I can't hire that person. It's too much money. Guys, the real currency is knowledge. It's not this. My family of origin lived paycheck to paycheck and was on food stamps multiple times. I am a multi-millionaire. How is that possible? Do you think I learned that in college? No, emphatically no. Okay? I learned that from getting proximity to people who know how to make money. And you know what I had to do to get proximity to them? What do you think it is? Pay them! Bro, you know how many people call me on a regular basis? They're like, hey bro, can I take you out to coffee? I'm like, dude, I don't need your coffee money. That is not a valuable exchange.
Not even a steak?
No, it's not I don't need your dinner money, bro. It's not a valuable exchange. Do you see what I'm saying? So the saver, you don't invest in your business, you don't do that, right? The last one is the self-medicator. When things go right, you know what you do? You celebrate with food, alcohol, and substances. When things go wrong, do you know what you do? You go back to food, alcohol, and substances. And then do you know what happens? You're in this perpetual cycle. Yep, deep breaths that never change. Do you understand? Hey, you know what's the energy in the room? It went from like, haha, this is cool, to like, fuck.
Man, this is no longer fun.
This is no longer fun. You know, the first time we had a coaching call, one-on-one coaching call, do you know what he had to do?
I have to take a nap.
Take a nap.
Yeah.
It was heavy. It was intense.
What do you guys think of those 5 that you are maybe struggling with one of those right now that is stopping you to get your visa.
Or combination.
Or a combination, yeah. All five. What comes to mind?
Okay.
All five, yeah.
But which one is the most pronounced?
Yeah.
The saver.
The saver for you.
Okay, saver for you, same for you. Right? Do it yourself is really about doing what? Saving money.
Yeah, so we don't have to pay anybody to do it.
Yeah.
So like think about that. If energetically I'm like this with money, how do I expect more to get put in?
That's why awareness is key. Like all that we're talking about, like all these things in this list, these 5 demons, or what did you call them? Demons?
Assassins.
Assassins.
Damn, you were hard demons.
Demons, wow, whatever. They're interchangeable, I guess. But they can be demons.
We all have this, guys. All of us. But you know what we do instead? We go on Instagram. Life is great. I'm fantastic.
Yeah.
Hashtag thriving. Hashtag abundance. Meanwhile, I'm on calls with people and they're crying. How many times? Okay.
Why it's so natural to.
We had a conversation.
You avoid it. Yeah.
We've so what I'm aware of, because I have the good fortune of working with him. How many conversations that we've had that you vehemently disagree with what I'm saying to you?
Almost everyone.
Yeah. And how many times, like, I will say something to you, and for 45 minutes you'll be like, no, that's not what's true.
At least 80% of the time.
Right? So here.
You didn't believe it was true?
No, I mean, here's the thing.
Yes.
It's Ray Dalio that says you got to triangulate truth with
Believable people.
Believable people. Meaning that what he did right there is it's a coaching call for me. He's like tackling exactly and deeply what it's going to and going into the conversation there, right? Sometimes we just push ourselves because again, it's like years and years just lying to ourselves that it's not fear, that it's not failure, right? But internally, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
We're fearful of something.
These things, they will resurface themselves at different times, and you might have some that you're more likely to go back to, right? But I've done I'm sure you as well, I've done a lot of personal coaching, I've done a lot of personal development. I pay people to do that to me on a weekly basis as well. And so, because I'm like, just tell me what it is. Like, here's what I think. I know I'm wrong, but like, tell me what it is. Because sometimes if we wait too long to reflect on ourselves, we bullshit ourselves. Our ego is trying to keep us safe from that feeling.
And the people that are around us, meaning well, it happened here. As we started to get into it, everybody else felt uncomfortable for you, so they started to try to talk to take it away from you.
Yeah.
You know what your people that love you do? Oh, papi, you're good just the way you are. And do you know how much that helps you? Fucking zero. Nothing. So here's the question, whether it's me or anybody else. Until now, how many people do you have in your life that you give permission to do that?
To do what?
Call you
Confront
out.
you.
Oh, a few.
Who?
I've surrounded myself with mentors, with
Claro, but how often do you speak to them?
daily.
Okay, and do they do this with you?
Yeah.
Okay, then good. Then keep doing that.
No, I'm telling you.
Then good. But that's what she's referring to.
And it comes to with time, it gets to a place that you get comfortable with it because you know that something. The same way that he says that how many times I get uncomfortable. Some calls would jump in and I'm like, okay, it was good, but I didn't feel that discomfort. And it's like you look forward to that discomfort because after that discomfort, you know that something is going to happen. You're going to have some sort of quantum lead. You have a realization of something that you're not doing right or something that you can do better. So for me, just to give you the backstory of what happened in my business and how Aaron helped me scale, because again, it's like you got to start with what we just did right here. It was more about mindset, if you think about it.
I was going to say.
We haven't get into the details on what specifically, tactically, you can do in your business to scale. Yes or no?
Because truthfully, those don't matter as much
Yeah.
as this.
Exactly. You got to start with these, and then you got to start implementing the tactical one. So for me, in the first call, like he said, it was before Aaron. I don't remember having somebody. I've had mentors too, but not having conversations like that. It was so uncomfortable that it was draining for me. So draining that I literally had to take a nap after the call.
But you to sleep.
They put me to sleep. So because the first conversation, and I was doing I was doing like 50 transactions as a solo agent. I didn't have any systems. I didn't even have a transaction coordinator, guys. I was doing everything myself. You raise your hand. Is that you? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So imagine doing, 50 deals in a year like that. In 2020, I did 48. In 2021, I did 50. That's when I realized, like, I'm not growing here. And you guys remember that those were good years, right?
Yeah.
So only 2 transactions different. So I was missing, the scaling part. I started coaching with Aaron, and then the first call was like, okay, what are your systems? I have none. How's your CRM? I don't know, it's there.
It's my phone.
It's my phone. So where do you keep track of the transactions? I don't know, in my head. So we start putting systems together, tools, actual tools. I hired staff. Now I have 3 people.
Wait. But when he says he hired staff, that seems like it's a very smooth hiring staff. That is not what happened. Okay? What happened is for him, his assassin was the saver.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because
One of them.
his past experience as a younger person, growing up in the Dominican Republic.
Yep.
So if you don't have a lot of resources, you don't think that affects your way you think? 100%. So I had to get him to deal with that, right? Then he hired someone. But do you think he hired them full time? Why? Yes. So we're on a call afterwards. He hired him part-time. He's like, yeah, bro, I found myself getting back into deals. I was like, why? He's like, well, my guy's part-time. I'm like, what the hell did you say to me?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, it's part-time. I'm like, what? What do you mean part-time? He's like, well, I'm like, no, hire him full-time right now. Call him right now and tell him we're going to be full-time.
How do you think that conversation was?
Yeah, you think he was like, yay? No, he was sweating bullets, man, all uncomfortable in his seat and stuff. So do you see what I'm saying? Like what Brian's saying, what we're all saying. You guys are used to coming to these types of things and they're like, oh, I'm so cool and I'm so awesome and look at me and like, here's the tactics. And how good does that do you, truthfully? Very little, okay? Instead, our goal and objective here is that you will walk away and be like, damn, which one is it? My hope and wish and prayer for you is that you go home and you write out, what am I actually afraid of? Because you're afraid of something, otherwise you'd be doing it. Whether it's approval, whether it's somebody else thinking you look stupid, whether it's I'm gonna fail in front of everybody, it's something. And getting really clear on what that is. Does that make sense? That will help you much more than me telling you like the tactical skills of like, okay, hire somebody. A lot of you guys are just worried about doing deals, no? Yeah, you're like, yeah, where's my next fucking deal gonna come from? That's cool, that's what I wanna talk, right? So the question is for people here, who here has a checklist that is not in their head, not on a piece of paper, but in a digital form for listing property? How fascinating is that? I want you guys to write something down. If memory is not a system, okay? And I want you to also think about this. Thousandaires think, what do I have to do? Do you know what millionaires think? What system do I need to build?
So somebody.
Do you understand? So the problem is that if listing property is all in your head, you know what that means? You know what that tells me? Every time you take a listing, you're the listing coordinator. You're the one that's coordinating everything. You're the one that's doing everything. And you're calling that work. That is not work.
Busy work.
That is clerical. That is income servicing activity, not income producing.
Highest and best use.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When you go into a doctor's office, does the doctor greet you at the door? No. Who does? What's the first question they ask you?
Do you have an appointment?
What's the second question they ask you?
What's your name?
How are you going to pay for this shit? Right? Not, are you sick? How are you going to pay for this shit? Cash or do you have insurance? Then they say, great, and they hand you now an iPad. What's on the iPad? Questions. What are they doing?
Intake.
Pre-qualifying. Where does it hurt? How long has it hurt? Have you have a history of it hurting? Have you traveled outside of the country? Have you changed medications? Whatever, right? Then they say, great, the doctor will be with you in a minute, which is a lie. You wait for 25, 30 minutes, and then do you get greeted by the doctor? No. Who are you greeted by? The physician's assistant or the nurse practitioner. Then what do? They bring you in a room, you pee in a cup, they bang on your knee, they say, what are you in for? They scribble on a little iPad. They say, the doctor will be in with you in a minute, and that is also a lie. You wait for another 25 minutes, what does the doctor do? He or she blows in, grabs the chart, grabs the iPad, says, oh, you're here for this? You know what they do? They go like this, that's a bill. They touch you here, that's a bill. You go, that's a bill. They touch your abdomen, that's a bill. They write you a script, that's a bill. And they say, hey, I want to see you back in 2 weeks, have a nice day. And they leave. They're there for 10 to 15 minutes.
Wait, I have a question.
10 to 15 minutes, right? I need you to understand something. They do that 20 times a day. And I get to make my favorite phone call.
Oh, man.
Oh, it's my favorite. Hey, Tom. Yep, it's Aaron here. And I know they know. Fuck. Yeah, I just want to let you know I met with the Smiths and they decided to hire us. I'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. If you have a buyer, bring them by. But you could go ahead and cancel your appointment at 4. Bye-bye now.
Come on, Aaron. That's not your favorite phone call.
Oh, it's the favorite one. Yeah, it's one of the favorites for sure. Yeah. I'll give you one story. I was on an appointment, at the beginning of my career, I went on an expired appointment. And this is at the time where there's massive expires. There were 4 people going on the appointment. But I purposely scheduled myself so I was the last one. I knew there was an appointment at 3, right? So I show up at 3:30 and I knock on the door. My appointment's at 4. Person comes to the door, they're like, oh no, if you don't mind, we have an agent here. I was like, oh, it's no problem. I could just wait in the living room. Bro, you wanna see somebody turn white and shit their pants? And I just sit there and I watch him start to fumble. He's like, mess his whole thing up. I'm like, get the fuck out of there, bro. So he gets out, I sit down with the seller, the husband looks right at me, he goes, that was stone cold. And then he proceeded to list the property with me. Right? So, yeah, what Jose's saying is this is a zero-sum game. I want everybody in this room to be as successful as possible. I want you to take as many listings as you possibly can. And our intention today is to be that relationship for you guys, right? To equip you with what you need, the tactical, practical information that you need in this marketplace with regards to strategy. Are we clear that we need a different strategy? With regards to what to say and how to say it. Are we more clear on what to say and how to say it? Does it seem like it's like some sort of coincidence that me and Jose are lucky that we list so many properties? Does that seem true? No. There's a very logical, practical system that we're using that you guys can learn. Okay? So I think what would be cool now is maybe to open it up for a quick Q&A. Any questions and answers? Yeah. Anything you guys got? We got microphones if anybody's got any questions. Yes, ma'am.
So you say that you don't come to a price right away.
Yes.
Yep. So do you do a net sheet? And I don't think
No.
You don't do a net sheet.
I don't
either.
avoid a net sheet as much
all
as
costs.
I can.
And
people get so analytical on the net sheet. They're like, $55 for a notary? And it's like, or the other agent said the notary is going to be free.
Yes.
And it's like, dude, you're making a $500,000 decision over a $50. They get so analytical.
You're like creating friction that doesn't need to be any. So what I used to do, because I was trained to do it, I would send the net sheet before I go and people would cancel appointments. So then I experientially stopped doing that. And instead, once we have agreement, I have them start to take care of the paperwork. And after they sign a 4-page listing agreement, what's the thing we're looking at? The net sheet.
Or for me, if they ask me, well, how much am I going to net at that price that you're going to list it at? I'll take out my pencil. I'll be like, okay, well, if you price it at $950, I could even run a couple scenarios for you, all right? $950, and then minus the commissions, we're left with this. For escrow, title, and transfer tax, we can assume about 3/4 of a percentage point, which is less than 1%. That would give us a net of approximately $545,000.
And then you could say to them, and I'm wondering, would that allow you to make this move happen? Because if you say, was that enough, is it ever enough? It's never fucking enough. So instead it's like, well, I'm wondering, would that allow you to make this move happen in Texas? Yeah, it'd probably allow us to.
The net sheet people get so analytical. It's such a deal breaker if you do that. You can still accomplish the same thing, and you can even run a couple different scenarios just by having a simple pen and a paper and be like, oh, let me run a couple different scenarios.
Yeah, so to me, that's similar to them asking you what the price is up front, and it creates friction. So if you tell them, they shut down, and that's what you're kind of doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's why.
Not only that, but a net sheet you have to prepare in advance, which means you already have the price that you're thinking in their head.
And they'll be like, well, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Lisa.
Lisa. They're like, well, Lisa doesn't believe in our house.
If you have the wrong number on there. So the way to always be prepared is just 0.0075, the price minus the commission, which the commission's negotiable as well,
yeah,
too.
And I'll even
meaning you guys can negotiate that and come up with different scenarios for them. Would that work for you?
Yeah, and I'll even tell them before I go in the pre-qual. So what I'll do is I'll bring with me the appropriate paperwork, right? So provided that it all makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident, we can get started right away. I'll also have with me a net sheet, so that way you can see dollars and cents what the proceeds would be when you move to Texas. Would that work for you?
My net sheet is this.
Yeah.
This manila folder, I think that's what it's called. Actually, when I get to the presentation and I'm writing the comps, I have it on the table. One of the struggles that I had was putting the contract on the table. I wanted to kind of keep it in my bag because I was nervous about putting it on the table. So I just started putting in this manila folder, started using this to write different scenarios on it, and then the contract's already on the table.
That's right.
I don't have to worry about taking the contract out. It's already there.
What is your strategy to overcome the commission objection?
Yeah, so I think it's like, that's interesting, and I think me and Jose will both be able to answer that. I think what's happened is like we don't recognize that they have a lot of options at their disposal now, way more than they did in the past. And I'm going to say something to you guys that you're probably not going to like. Okay? There's an argument to be made that you make too much money for what you're doing. I mean, there's an argument to be made for that. Like you're making $30,000 to sell a house, like that's a lot of money, right? They know this, and they know that they have lots of choices and options at their disposal. So if you're approaching this from like an all or nothing mentality, you're gonna lose shit all the time. Me and Jose had this conversation, bro. He called me one day, he's like, yo, I got this guy, he wants to list a home with me, but he will not, I've used all of the handlers, tried to do it, whatever. He won't go more than 4%. I said, okay, what's the hesitation? He's like, I don't know, should I do it? I'm like, let me ask you a question, Jose. He's like, yeah. I'm like, where did your family come from originally?
Mexico.
He's like, Mexico. I'm like, what did your grandpa do when he came here? He's like, he picked strawberries. I was like, was that a hard fucking job? He's like, yeah. I'm like, did he get a lot of breaks? He's like, no. Was that 6 days a week or 3 days a week? He's like, 6. So I'm like, let's imagine for a moment, you called your grandpa, if he was still living, and you said, hey grandpa, here's the deal. I have to drive over to this place in a moving couch that entertains me, okay?
Blah, blah, blah.
Go blah, 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 scribble on a sheet of paper, and I want to make 20,000 bucks. Would he be like, no son, you shouldn't do that? He was like, no, of course he would. I also asked him, are they motivated? Are they going to price it at a price that's going to cause it to sell? He said, yeah. I said, go get it. He ended up doing it and double ending it. So my whole point is
And
that
I got like another listing in the neighborhood.
correct. So my point is that it's negotiable. And the way that I handle that is like, look, the professional fee, it's not going to be a reason why we don't do business. I promise you. We're going to come up with something that's mutually beneficial to all parties. And I don't want us to do something that we don't both feel comfortable about, because if we don't both feel comfortable, we won't do it. That also raises my status. Like we're on the same playing field. And now it becomes this like, okay, like we're both going to be reasonable. You strike me, Peter, to be someone who's reasonable. So I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial.
What
Right?
I usually say as well too is I'll be like, well, look, that's a really good question. I start off by because what do most people do when they hear the commission thing? They tense up.
Freeze.
They freeze. So smile. That's a really good question. Here's what I tell my clients. I don't have a set commission that I charge. I'm flexible on that. I usually try to accommodate my services to whatever my clients' needs are. Is there a certain commission structure that would work for you?
Boom.
And guess what? I put it back on
Them.
Now they might say, well, instead of 6, I was thinking 5.
Yeah.
Or I was thinking 5.5. You're over here imagining they're thinking
3.
4% or 3%. You have no idea what they're thinking. Yeah. What were you thinking? Well, I was thinking 5%. Oh. Wow. 5%?
Like total?
Like
Or just for me?
Just on the listing side, or are we talking about the whole thing? But do you see like if you throw it back at them now you're going to have to make a decision. You can either choose to negotiate at that
Right.
time, or you can say something like, Aaron, let me ask you this. If I did it for 5%, would there be any other reason we wouldn't do business today?
I don't think so.
What did I just do? I shook on it.
That's right.
Do people like to shake on things and not follow through on them?
This is a signal of
we
what?
got a deal.
We're doing a deal. Does that make sense? And what he said there is really important. So the other thing I would do is before I start to get into that conversation, the only thing that I would do in between is I'd say, okay, so it sounds like if we can come to an agreement in terms of the professional fee that there wouldn't be any other reason why we couldn't do business. Is that right? That's called setting it aside. Because you guys run headfirst into that objection, but there's 2 or 3 more behind them. Like I want to think about it, I want to do that, right?
Or here's what's going to happen. If you say no, or I charge 6%, any other questions, and you say no, I'm not willing to negotiate, next.
See ya. That's
Somebody else would be willing to do it.
Right.
And unless you're the type of agent that basically they're like, dude, this guy's the best. I don't care what he charges. They're going to be like, next. Even for me, they're going to be like, next.
And I think the thing too that's also interesting, and the reason why I said about that argument to be made about making too much money, is most of you guys don't have additional ways of adding tangible value. It's more like, you should list with me and pay this just because. Which is fucking dumb. Imagine if you went to other places and that's what they said.
Now,
so Jose, look, if you list with him, he has a moving truck you could use for free. If you list with him, he'll stage the home for free. If you list with him and you need a place intermediate, he has Airbnbs that you could stay at for free. Do you see what I'm saying? Like he has real things that are actually worth real what? Money. Value, not like, I deserve it.
Now here's another thing on that. If they ask you over the phone before you go on the appointment, what's your commission? Do you say, oh, it's 6%? Trap. Another trap right there. Another landmine. Don't say I charge 6%. Great. Here's what I tell my clients. That's a really good question. Here's what I tell my clients. I usually try to be flexible on my commission, just depending on whatever my clients' needs are. Here's what I can promise you. When we meet, if you like the services that we offer, I promise you commission will not be the reason we don't do business. Is that okay with you?
I'm sure we'll come up with something that's mutually beneficial.
Because when you're in front of them, you could actually showcase your value proposition and why you're the right person for the job. And you're not going to be able to close them on the telephone. I can't tell you how many listings I've taken because somebody else goes, the other agent said they'll charge 6.5%. I meet with them, I'll be like, oh, I'll charge you 5.5%. Great, we got a deal. Yeah. That person went to high school with them. It's a best friend of them. They're willing to throw that relationship for that extra
I love when people are like, they're a best friend. You're like, well, you know, my experience is this is a business decision about who can help you net the most and do it quickly and efficiently. So it always makes sense to get more than one opinion with regards to strategy, price, and commission. I'm wondering, do you think that would be helpful or useful? Watch that friendship get diminished to nothing. Well, you know, we haven't been friends for that long, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Super quick.
Was that helpful? Yes. Yeah, awesome.
Good. Yes, sir. The question was, are we competing with iBuyers? Yeah. And that's diminished dramatically. So in 2021, I was going up against Open Door frequently. But you'll notice their strategy has changed, okay?
They're trying to work with agents now.
You know what they're saying? We're your best friends. When meanwhile, fucking 12 months ago, they're sending stuff in the mail like, fuck those agents, you don't need them. Right? So the marketplace has changed and their marketing budgets have shrunk and they're all shrinking. So it's much less. And what I would say to people in those instances is like, well, you know, I'm aware that in that particular business model, their goal and objective is to buy your home.
To make a profit.
To make a profit. And I would much rather you have the profit. So I know this is a business decision about getting the most and who can do it quickly and efficiently. And as such, it usually makes sense to get more than one opinion just to make sure you're making the best choice. Does that make sense to you? And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. So if we were to get together under normal conditions, would you be available in the evenings or the afternoons? And I just close for an appointment.
So the way that I usually handle that is, well, look, the difference between Open Door and myself is that Open Door is a home buying company, which means they have to make a profit in order to keep existing in business. Unfortunately, that means that they have to buy your home at a discount and sell it at a higher price. But what's stopping you from making that profit instead of having them? So here's what we can do. If you want to still keep that option open, we can exclude Open Door from any agreement that you and I have.
Yeah.
We could put it on the market and we can see the most that a buyer's willing to pay. And if for whatever reason I'm not able to get you what you want, you can go back to Open Door.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this, Open Door actually has fees associated with their sales. Did you know that?
5%.
Yeah, and not only that, they actually lost a lawsuit where they had to pay $70 million for false advertising. Did you know that? Which is fucking true. Google it. Because they were saying that they could get people more money than agents could. And they got caught in that and they had to pay $70 million for lying. Oh, and by the way, Zillow lost $750 million using their algorithms to buy property.
Not only that, but a good thing for Open Door, you can say, okay, you can definitely sell it to Open Door if you wanted to. Let me ask you this, do you want top dollar or do you want to sell your property for a discount? No, I want top dollar. Well, if you want top dollar, the best way to get top dollar is to put it on the open market, expose it to all of the buyers, and get people competing for your property. If you're willing to sell it for a discount, then Open Door might be the right option for you.
Yeah, and
you're kind of just like keeping that option open.
And so, and with that being the case, it really seems as though you getting an additional opinion so you can be crystal clear on all of your options would help you to make the decision that you feel is best. Would you agree? Yes. Yeah, I figured as much. So if we were to connect under normal conditions, would you be available in the evenings or the afternoons?
Now, in some cases, would Open Door offer a ridiculously high price and even after net is more than what you can get them?
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, that's a great offer.
I think you should go with it. I did that multiple times.
When you have enough business, you lose less attachment to the individual deal. Like I had a client very early on in my career as a for sale by owner. And he was like, well, I want to sell, wasn't factoring in capital gains. I told him, not a good idea to sell. He sold 3 properties in his career. Sometimes you're not the best option for them.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, and think about this. I want you guys to like kind of burn
That'll actually earn you more business.
Yeah, and I want you to burn this into your brain. When you generate, you don't have to tolerate. When you generate, you don't have to tolerate. So if you're generating like in prospecting on a regular basis, you don't have to tolerate like people's stuff. And to Jose's point, you'll earn a client for life by telling him the truth. Like, hey man, like it really seems as though, because if you were to have me help you, you'd have to compensate me to do that. And based on the numbers, it seems like that's a better option for you. So may I make a suggestion? Yeah, I would go with it. And then if for some reason it doesn't work out, you can give me a call. Fair enough? Yeah, that's fair. And then MTFO, move the fuck on. Move on to something else.
Or even exclude them. I've had situations where the neighbor wants to buy the property. Let's exclude them from the agreement. The probability of that actually working out is so slim to none that the risk factor is
very small.
Slim. I've burned one time on that in 800 sales. One time. And I've used it so many times just to get a contract signed.
That's good.
Those people that relied heavily on Airbnb or VRBO being the two most popular, you're in trouble. Yeah, it is a bust for those of you that have no freaking idea what you're doing.
I feel like the days of that are like coming to an end.
No, not coming to an end. They came to an end.
Okay. Fernando, I know you're the resident Airbnb short-term rental specialist, right? And you have something that almost nobody that I know does, which is direct access to real data, because not only do you manage a very large pool of short-term rentals for clients, you also personally own a meaningful amount of short-term rentals. So you can see what's actually happening in the market in real time, which is a huge competitive advantage, because you need an accurate assessment of reality in order to produce a good outcome. And you have that assessment. So people have been asking me all the time, like, what's going on in the short-term rental market? I'm like, we got to get Fernando. So tell us what you're seeing in the data.
Okay, so, there's a lot to unravel here, but I'm going to talk, just for sake of time, I'm going to talk specifically about regions, right? A lot of people, especially the people that recently got into the game, for me, recently meaning people that got into the Airbnb game within the last 2 years, have a not a true sense of what the short-term rental business is, because the last 2 years have been an anomaly. Those of you, and I'm going to reference this or compare it to the real estate market. The real estate market has been hot. You didn't need any skills to make money in the real estate market in the last couple of years. But today, skill is a necessity. In the short-term rental game, it's the same, right? In the last couple of years, you can put anything on Airbnb and you're going to be successful. It really didn't matter. Today, it matters. And what matters most is not only skill, but data. And data and every company will kill for data. Our company is the same, right? Those people that relied heavily on just one or two platforms, Airbnb or VRBO being the two most popular, you're in trouble. Because, and more importantly, if you didn't take the time to understand your market, you're in big trouble right now. You're losing money because Airbnb is no longer focused on the host. They're focused on the guest. So having that data or that experience, right? We've been in this game for a long time. So having the experience to know what market or who to market to is extremely important today.
So the couple of things I'm hearing from you. Number one is that anybody who got into the game from 2020, onward, they don't have an accurate assessment of reality as far as what the short-term rental game is about, because anything they did worked. So people can confuse luck with skill.
Correct.
The second thing I'm hearing from you is that in the short-term rental game, just like in the residential resales game, that when times get tough, only the skilled get paid.
Yep.
And the skills that are required in the short-term rental game, number one, is operational excellence, like being a great operator, right? And not solely relying on, platforms in order to do all the marketing for you and things of that nature. And then the second is having access to actual data so you can see how things are changing. And then the third thing I wrote down is this major shift, because I read a book called Machines, Platforms, and Crowds that helped me to understand platforms well. And platforms are really about bringing together two people, like a buyer and a seller, or in this instance, like a host and a tenant.
Correct.
And what we're experiencing right now is that the hosts are less valuable than the tenant because there are so many of them And the platform is no longer optimizing for that side of the equation. They're optimizing for the tenant side of the equation. So if you don't have mechanisms in place for doing your own types of marketing, whether that be social media, whether that be something to drive traffic to your own site, you are experiencing pain at the moment. Is that right?
100%. Great assessment. This Airbnb bust myth that's been going on throughout social media and these quote unquote influencers that got into the short-term rental game that are claiming that they're losing money. Airbnb is a bust now. Yeah, it is a bust for those of you that have no freaking idea what you're doing. But for those of you with the skills and and more importantly, those of you that have data that drives you, systems that drive you, and processes that drive you, you're going to be fine.
Yeah,
But
you'll be
those that
absolutely
don't,
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the same when you go back to the residential resale side. Like people who have the skill, they know how to prospect, they know how to pre-qualify, they know how to go on appointments, they know how to handle objections and close. Not only will they be fine, but in an environment like this, there's opportunity. And I'm imagining what we're going to see over the next 6 months is a lot of those operators who don't have the systems, who don't have the processes, who don't have the data, because no longer is it profitable. They're going to have to put their properties on the market and sell them. And for people who understand and have those things in place, that's a huge opportunity for them, right? During COVID, people wanted to be in the middle of nowhere. They didn't want to be around anybody, right? And that worked, and you could buy anything in the middle of nowhere, a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and you'd probably do well. And what we're seeing now is that humans' behavior is changing. That is no longer the case. And those people's bookings are going down dramatically. Is that what you're seeing?
Right. The mountains of North Carolina were extremely popular, in 2020 and 2021. Everybody wanted to get away. They wanted to, and people couldn't, a lot of people, and to a certain extent, some still are, were working remote, right? You're not allowed to go to the office anymore. So they were taking advantage and they were going to these remote places. And people were they were being sold this idea that, hey, buy this property because you're going to be able to make X. And they were showing the numbers. For example, in 2021, realtors were showing what the numbers, their short-term rental income was for 2020. And in 2021, it was still good. But in 2022, those are the people that I said are hurting because they thought that what was happening in 2020 and what was happening in 2021 was going to continue. And clearly that is not the case today.
In fact, we were having conversations with someone and they were sending me those types of properties. And you said to me they're partially right. like the vehicle, this is a good vehicle. What's happening though is that if you look at like occupancy rates and kind of income for 2022, you will see even in, towards the end of the year or even like 6 months in, that dramatically is different than what was happening in 2021. So therefore, the prices that these people are asking for properties are not in alignment with what's actually true.
But more importantly, here's what people need to understand. Airbnb is constantly promoting and saying that the ARV, which is the average daily rates, have increased. 100% that have increased now. Since, in the past couple of years, they're steadily increasing. But the question is, are they increasing enough to cover inflation and to cover purchase price of the property? And they're not, right? Occupancy rates are the same. The ARV is a little higher, but it's not covering the gap between inflation and your purchase price.
Now, the other thing I think was interesting is I asked you a question about, and this came down to data too, like about these properties that are like, big and have all these amenities and all that other stuff. And this goes down to operation as well. And you were like what I'm seeing experientially is that if you think about the end user, there's a lot fewer of those people walking around who can spend that amount per night than there are for something that's closer to the equator. And in fact, due to that supply and demand difference, there's a lowered supply of that type of tenant and an enormous supply of those types of properties for them to choose from.
Correct.
And as such, you would like people think like, oh, I need to buy this like big thing. And you're like, that's not what we're seeing in the data.
There's not enough people that are going to pay for that in order for you to get a return on that money that's going to cost you to purchase that. So ideally, and you can look at the history of Airbnb or short-term rentals, because remember, this is another thing that people need to understand. Short-term rentals have been around way longer than Airbnb has. I mean, I remember as a kid renting a house to go on vacation, right? So that part has always been around. And you got to look at what the bread and butter of the short-term rental industry is. Today, here's who we market to. And again, it depends on where we're managing the property. Depends on, because we know our guests. We know who we're going to market to as our primary, and then there's the secondaries, what we refer to. So, for example, South Florida being South Florida, we market to vacationers, right? We market to families, but today it's smaller families. We don't have families with 5 or 6 kids anymore. We have families with 1 or 2 kids. So you need, at the biggest, it's a 3-bedroom, right? And then the other target for us, now that South Florida has become a financial hub, an attraction to business, we target to business travelers, right? A business traveler doesn't need a 4-bedroom house, but they could stay in a 2-bedroom house or even a 3-bedroom house if the price is right. But when I'm looking to invest in a property, I'm looking for a 3-2 or a small 3-2 or a 2-2. That's what I'm looking for, right? I can still do a 2-1 or a multi-unit property that has studios and 1-bedrooms.
Appreciate you waiting. Hosey had me waiting because this is East Coast, West Coast. And we had to get this emergency meeting popping because we got all these people texting us, emailing us. And I wanted to get together some powerful leaders and the elite builders so we can address this head on. In the 18 years I was selling real estate, things changed as far as like how the business is done in terms of technology. This is a fundamental structural change to the business. At the same time, what I'm aware of is that our industry is very, adaptive. I know that with these changes, people who pivot will actually, I think, do better and actually make more money. So the question is just, how are we going to pivot? So for those of you who, I think everybody knows Hosey in the baby blue right now, looking smooth and easy in the baby blue.
I'm wearing cowboy boots. You guys want to see?
Hey,
Oh,
oh,
Wow.
shows me I'm just wearing underwear, bro, so I can't stand up. and then we got the powerful Vicente Arzata, our resident kind of contract specialist. So welcome, guys. I'm excited to hop on this live. I felt it was important as a leader to just kind of address it head on. So I guess the first thing we can start with is that I did a post maybe like 2 months ago where I said, hey, I think with a very high degree of probability here in the perhaps distant future or not so distant future, buyer's agents will have to negotiate a portion, if not all of their fee. And, 2 things came from this particular settlement, which, by the way, it has to be approved by the judge, hasn't been approved yet. Let's say it does. We'll go with the assumption that it will. There were 2 main changes that were agreed to. One was that compensation can no longer be put in MLS for a buyer's agent. Now, it did not say you cannot offer compensation to a buyer's agent. It just said that it can't be put in the multiple listing service. And what I'm aware of is for commercial real estate, a lot of transactions are done without the commission being put anywhere. And when somebody makes an offer, they kind of do an LOI, a letter of intent. And in that offer is the purchase sales price and also the professional fee that the buyer's agent is looking to get on that sale. And then it becomes a negotiation. The second rule is that if you do work with buyers, you must have a buyer broker's agreement kind of authorized. I think the goal and objective there is to have upfront conversations in terms of compensation and what that's going to look like. So Vicente, you've been selling real estate longer than me and Jose, probably combined. So talk to me a little bit about your first kind of reaction to those two rule changes.
Thank you, Aaron. This is something that has been going on in the back, in the brewing and the back burner for a long time, and technology and changes to the industry are the ones that are causing this. We, I'm in my third decade as a realtor, so I've seen a lot, especially after the year 2000. You call it that little thing they call the internet. So that brought a lot of changes. And I recall a conversation that we had a couple years ago where I shared with you that the power shifting on the real estate relationships in the 60s and the before when organized real estate was put together, the power was really in the hands of the brokerage. Then with the birth of the internet, the power shifted to the hands of the agents. But now with internet 4.0 or higher, the power is shifting to the hands of the consumer. So how do those is this change, this Burnett lawsuit and the settlement is going to affect our industry? First, like you say, um, it's going to be a different conversation between the seller and the listing agent.
A much more, I believe, skilled
Mhm.
and professional conversation.
Correct.
Yeah, and I believe that one of the things I wrote down is that buyers agents up until now have actually never had to come up with a formal presentation, the majority of them, a formal presentation demonstrating what value they bring to the transaction, right? And I think that one of the byproducts of this is that a lot of agents, the vast majority of agents are buyer heavy. They 60-70% of their transactions are on the buy side. So a lot of those agents, I think, will perhaps not have the capacity or the bandwidth to make that pivot, right? Or have those skills. I think the ones that do pivot, do have a formal presentation and basically list buyers, will actually make the same, if not perhaps a little bit more, as long as they can demonstrate the fact that they add value to the transaction and specifically how they add value. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, because for the better part of my career, 25 years, then you sat down with the seller and you had an exclusive agreement for compensation, but majority of the buyers didn't. And the level of skill, that's something that I've learned from you over the years, that the level of skill necessary to represent a buyer was not really um, Mike Ferry used to call it a glorified door openers,
Yeah.
and that is going to have to change. That this lawsuit changes that.
Well,
The skill will get paid.
Well, here's what I wanted to, and this was new to me. I actually didn't know this, but Vicente shared this with me off camera. I think, Vicente, you said that it's this that has already happened in other countries, meaning that like it's already happened. Did you say in France, or
France.
did you say like where has this happened? Because it's funny because if you look around sometimes, something that maybe appeared new to us may have already happened somewhere else. So like, do you have any insight on where that happened? Any insight on how that works in France or some of these different countries?
It is a great question, Jose Luis. The fact that France is already operating that way, and also Australia is happening with the transactions have decoupled the compensation from the seller into the buyer's agent. And that's one of my questions. My question is like, what does this lawsuit does to an already wounded U.S. real estate market?
Yeah.
And that we still have to see.
Well,
What is the actual market?
But I think that there is. I love that we're doing this. By the way, it's so cool to like try and get ideas of believable people. So I think that with a high degree of probability, being that volume has already gone down 19, like depending on geographic area last year, 19 to 30%, depending on where it was, 6 million to 4 million transactions. And let's say the majority of buy sides, I mean, the majority of agents are buy side heavy, 60, 70% of their deals are on the buy side. I also think a byproduct of this is over time, let's say over a 5 to 10 year time span, I do think professional fees will come down over time as a result of the decoupling, right? Now, I also think that as a ramification of this, one of the things I wrote down is that teams that are focused on buy side, because what the model has been since the internet, which was the last structural change to the business, right? Because it used to be like nobody had any information about real estate, and real estate agents had basically a monopoly of information. Well, that got decoupled, that got decentralized, right? Democratized with the internet. And then the model became buy leads and then offer out, and then work the buy side leads, because the majority of those leads are buyers. And that works when you know that you can expect let's say, all commissions are negotiable. We're all aware of that. Let's say a 2 to 3% commission on the buy side. That model functions. When that changes with a very high degree of probability, that has a problem with that model. Because I know that the majority of teams don't operate on
just listings,
like really fundamental good economics, where the team lead usually is in production, right? Because they need to be in order to be profitable. And the team itself doesn't actually, they operate on very thin profit margins. So if that revenue drops by a third, that makes that model problematic over time.
Vicente, when there was the MLS book, before, did they advertise
Hey, I feel like we just went to a cave and we were like, tell us, old man, did you used to use tablets when you...
So, and the reason I ask is, there was a video by Glenn Sanford today, and he was talking about how before, I think he said something about that the buyer's agent compensation wasn't advertised at some point, or it was on the list. So he said something that I didn't quite understand. Okay. So I kind of wanted to ask the wise Vicente.
And it's a great question. In my experience, my opinion, what I remember is that the buyer's compensation was not advertised. It was not
in the book
anywhere until the birth of the MLS in the early 2000s.
The MLS came about. So
when the MLS came about, then cooperating agreements and share compensation was advertised. Then in the midst of settling this lawsuit, one of the things that NAR and Zillow and Millo and Willow and Truly and Zulia did is they began publishing the buyer's agent's commission as a way to appease this lawsuit. And now that this settlement changes that. Okay. So another brutal change to the market, right? When I started, the MLS changed the market. Zillow changed the market. Now this lawsuit changes the market again.
And I think one of the things I wrote down too is that Zillow's model is very much so in jeopardy as a result, because their model is they take our data, sell it back to us, so agents will make money on the buy side transactions, and they can charge 30-40% referral fees with like Zillow Flex and whatnot. At the same time, though, what I just mentioned in terms of the economics of that no longer makes sense if I don't know that I can expect a 2 to 3% commission on the buy side.
Right.
So
here is something else, Aaron. CoStar bought Homes.com. How much they invest millions and millions of dollars. They had 3 commercials at the Super Bowl, and their model is based on feeding off the agents.
Giving all the leads back to the consumer.
They became the middleman. They get the consumer, and then buyers agents buy these leads, and their model, believe it or not, is based on the agents will not call those leads. So I discovered that these big companies, they sell leads to 5 different agents on the same market, the same leads, and that's how they make tons of money.
Yeah, I think there was a statistic where they sold like something crazy, like I don't know, like 20 million leads, but there were only like 4 million transactions in the year, right? Or 100 million leads, something crazy like that. Well,
So
and what
that's how
Homes.com
the
does
business.
is that they give all the leads back to the listing agent,
They changed
which
it. Yeah.
I can understand why agents would like that. Now, I'm also curious to see, and then we can talk about kind of strategically some things that people can be doing, right? So first, I think it makes sense. Like, hey, what do I think will be first level consequence, second level consequences, and then as a practicing real estate agent, how do I need to start presenting?
Beautiful.
Right? Like, how do I need to start presenting on the listing side? How can I demonstrate value on the buy side, and that sort of thing. So. The other thing that I wrote down here is that smaller brokerages are going to get like hammered. So people who have like 60 agents, like 100 agents or less, like they're going to get hammered because they were already having a hard time from an economic perspective. But if revenue has the potential of going down, they're going to have to, and every brokerage is really like involved in these lawsuits. So they have to spend some sort of resources or time or money to fight them or to pay. And that takes time away and resources for adding value to agents and investing in technology and also not doing mergers and acquisitions. So I think what will happen is they will have to move to models where they can get rid of expenses like cloud-based models, which we are at the E to X.
Exactly.
Hey,
XP.
I believe that will happen too. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think that you're absolutely right. See, everything is commission based, and one of my mentors said that realtors, we are the piece of meat between the two breads.
Yeah.
So as commissions are under pressure because it's the money that is in the middle.
Jose thought that was funny for some reason. I don't know why. He's such a little kid, bro.
He has heard me say this before.
You said the meat between two breads, and he was like, ha 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 ha. Ha.
You didn't think that was funny? Come on,
one of my title reps calls them Vicente-isms. But anyways, moving forward, because the commissions are under fire. I saw this coming a long time ago, and I've always throughout my career, Jose knows this, I've been extremely fond of buyers because that moral salary that gives you, seeing them put the key on their first home and help them build wealth, and having called me after 20 years and say, I want you to represent my daughter because you help us with this. And that is cool, right? But what happens to the skill? I remember that we used to give guarantees. A client, if I am the consumer, Aaron, and I want representation, I want to see value. Now that I'm gonna have to pay, I have to see value. We had these conversations over and over with listing sellers, where they say, "Okay, I'm interviewing 3 agents. What is your value?"
That's right.
And
so
then the ability to represent that value, and then getting the contract.
Yeah, but I think we're assuming that listing agents and sellers aren't going to provide compensation anymore.
No, I agree with you. I think that they will. And I think that they'll do it in one of two ways. I think they'll do it either creatively by offering concessions, because you are allowed to offer concessions. Yeah. So let's say you're like, hey, I'm going to offer like a $10,000 closing cost concessions, but that'll help the buyer to pay perhaps a little bit of the buyer's agent's professional fee. I think you can also, as a listing agent, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves in terms of like what you can do, is now we've been talking about this for like a year, like presenting with options. So it's like, listen, we have a few options at our disposal in terms of compensation, and it is a tool that we use to market the property in terms of, exposure, right? Obviously, what we offer out or what we choose to offer out, whether it's a mixture of concessions or perhaps a little bit in terms of the compensation for the buyer's agent, that will increase the probability that we can get more views, which ultimately is going to end up with you netting the most money possible. So we're going to go over the options that you have, and I want you to feel completely comfortable with whatever we end up choosing. You're the boss, and I'll support you 100%. Now you have a menu of options. So a menu on the listing side could be, whatever it is in your geographic area, but let's say it's like, okay, let's say it's 2%. Again, all commissions are negotiable. So let's say it's 2%. And you're like, all right, well, at 2%, this is what you get. You get, you know, kind of the basic stuff, right? Now let's say it could be 2.5%. At 2.5, we add some things. Maybe we add a Matterport. Maybe we add this, we add that. Then at 3%, it's the full Monty, right? We'll have an appraisal done before we put it on the market. We'll pay for the appraisal. We'll have an inspection done. We'll give you up to $1,000 for whatever comes up in the inspection, plus what you get at the 2.5 and the 2, right? So it's a menu of options. Years like end of 2021, maybe it was 2022. I place a phone call to my little sister. I have 2 siblings, right? And one that's 9 years younger than me. And I call her specifically for a very specific reason. I need to understand this thing called Instagram.